What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm on Toxin Gaming today, people. Today we're going to be going over our second part of the Speed Duelist of Shadow deck prediction slash discussions. In the day we're actually going to be going over, Kamala's deck discussion. This is going to be the zombie deck. All right, without further ado, we're going to jump right into this. Kamala, I think that's how you say her name, is an anime character. She's one of the 7 Shadow Riders. She actually defeats a couple characters in the anime as well. I think she defeats like Zane and Crowler during the anime, and which are 2 like incredibly powerful characters for it from the anime. And she actually pilots the zombie deck that is focused around the vampire archetype. Vampire Lady is one of her ace monsters, along with Vampire Lord and Vampire Genesis. Now, Vampire Genesis is a very powerful zombie boss monster that has a graveyard recursion effect by discarding a zombie monster from your hand, and then you can special summon a zombie monster from your graveyard with less than the level. You can summon this guy as a special summon as well, just by banishing your Vampire Lord. So for 1 tribute cost, it's essentially just getting out Vampire Genesis with the utmost of ease. Other cards she uses in the anime is actually Ryu Koki. Ryu Koki is a very interesting monster card. He's a monarch statted monster outside of the defense points that has an ability that destroys warriors and spellcasters. So that's very unique in itself. Other cards you see her use is Despair from the Dark, which is a card already in Speed Duels, but could be a very interesting reprint if it did come to the Shadow Rider box. I think that's definitely worth talking about, at least. And then another decent reprint that's already in Speed Duels through Tournament Pack and through the actual set itself is Book of Life. Getting this card as another common reprint would be really nice to have, and she uses it in the anime, so I could definitely foresee us getting this card as a reprint from her. Moving on, we are going to talk about the structure deck Zombie Madness. This is the second structure deck I think that was ever released. Again, it's based around Vampire Genesis, which is her ace monster. So it's worth bringing up again, like we did with the Red Eyes Darkness Dragon deck. And this deck actually brought a plethora of different monster cards that are like worth talking about that could come to this box. Like not just monsters, just cards in general. So one of the first ones we should really talk about is Dark Dust Spirit. We don't have any spirits in Speed Duels, and I think that's a really weird thing that we don't have. And Dark Dust Spirit, I think, is the card to bring to make spirits a formidable force, and is definitely, a strong statted monster that clears the field and then returns back to your hand for next turn. We don't have like cards that special summon themselves every single turn, such as Treeborn Frog. So you're not able to like utilize this in the same type of way that like Frog Monarchs did. But we do have like Soul Exchange, I guess. But again, it's just a fair monster that has a really good payoff if you're able to use it. Another card worth talking about is Soul Absorbing Bone Tower. Now, the reason why that I feel like this card has potential to come in this deck is because it has the ability to mill cards off the top of the deck, and that's kind of what vampires are based around doing. So I think Soul Absorbing Bone Tower has the potential to come, and it's also just a very interesting card. So it has a protection effect in itself, and not only that, just being able to mill the cards is just really strong. There's also Spirit Reaper. Now, Spirit Reaper is notorious as being a broken card in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG around the time when it was first released. There's an entire format based around it called Reaper format, which I think is the format that happened, I think, after GOAT. I could be wrong on that. And it's just a powerful monster that can't be destroyed by battle, blows up if it's targeted by a card effect, and if it deals damage to your opponent, it actually discards a card from your opponent's hand. It's very strong in a lot of regards, and I think that it makes for a good monster to at least talk about. The potential of it coming to Speed Duels, it's a little low. Monsters that can't be destroyed by battle, we're getting in this set from the Cloudians, but Spirit Reaper itself, I feel like it's just a power creep of the Cloudian monsters that we are getting. The other card that I think is definitely worth talking about is a recruiter known as Pyramid Turtle. This card is so good. Pyramid Turtle is like Mystic Tomato, or if you play Speed Duels, Giant Rat or Warrior Lady of Wasteland. When it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can actually special summon a zombie monster from your deck with 2,000 or less defense. Now, this is like the Ryu Koki from earlier, and also the vampire monsters all have low defense points, so it's able to get into them a lot faster. So Pyramid Turtle floating into Vampire Lore, you can then get Vampire Lore banished to summon Vampire Genesis, and then you can use your Vampire Genesis skill, which is inevitably going to come. So it's going to be really interesting to see if we actually do get this card. I have money on us getting it. It's just so strong for the format. It's so good for zombies in general, and I think it just makes for the perfect monster to power creep this deck into the next level. There's also double custom and regenerating mummy in this deck. I definitely could see us getting these into the box as well as reprints. They are already in Speed Duels, like I said. Double custom literally came in the first decks for the Speed Duel format, and then regenerating mummy came in Battle City box. So there's no reason why I don't think we can get these cards as reprints. And then Call of the Mummy. Call of the Mummy is an interesting continuous spell card to talk about. We have Valhalla in the format, which is the fairy version of this card. If you don't know what Valhalla does, you control no monsters. You can Cyber Dragon a fairy from your hand. It's really nice. Call of the Mummy does the exact same thing, but it does it for zombies. I mean, what more could you want for this deck? If you get the Vampire Lord to hand, you can special summon it with Call of the Mummy. Then here comes Genesis. It's really nice to have. Alright, next on our list I want to talk about is the Duel Links Empire of Scarlet. This is a meta-defining pack. It came in a mini box for Duel Links, and on release completely reshaped the format and was one of the top tier decks of that format. And I think it's definitely worth talking about because there's cards in here that will put vampires in a very good place if they do come. But we're going to start off by talking about the box monster. This is Vampire Scarlet Scourge. Scarlet Scourge is a vampire monster that on normal or special summon, you can pay 1,000 life points and target a vampire monster in your graveyard and special summon it, but it can attack that turn. It also has an additional ability where if it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you get to actually steal that monster from their graveyard. And that in itself is just really, really powerful for Speed Duels. Now, my opinion on this is that we might not get these stronger vampires such as Scourge, just because I feel like they're going to want to push Genesis, and they're going to want to be like, this is the boss monster we want you to play. We're not going to give you too many boss monsters that make this card seem like it's weak. So I think Scourge might not be seeing the box, but it's worth talking about. And then we also got Vampire Familiar and Vampire Retainer. They both came in this box. Familiar searches the monster card whenever it's special summoned, like a vampire monster whenever it's special summoned. And Retainer searches a vampire spell or trap card whenever it's special summoned. And both of them can special summon themselves from the graveyard by sending a vampire from your hand or field to the graveyard. So it's just really nice. If we could get either of these cards, I more so could see Familiar coming over Retainer, being that Familiar only searches the monster. And then, like, yeah, you get to tribute it or everything, but some of these Vampire Spell and Trap cards are absolutely bonkers. Vampire Vamp is also a very strong monster that came in this set. And if we get Pyramid Turtle, it makes this card live. This card, if we don't get it, might not see, like, if we don't get Pyramid Turtle and get Vampire Vamp, we might not see this card see a lot of play in the format, but I definitely could see it being a card that is utilized if we did get the Pyramid Turtle. What it does is that when it's normal summoned, you can target one face of monster your opponent controls whose attack is higher than this card and equip it to this card, so you get to steal like the Perfectly Ultimate Great Moss, or if we're looking at the current format, you get to steal the Azana or something. It's really unique in that aspect. And this card gains attack equal to the combined original attack of the monster equipped to it by this effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard or equipped with the card, you get to special summon this card. So it's a reoccurring relinquished. That's kind of what it is. It's very strong. Pyramid Turtle floats into it. It's so good. So again, it's worth talking about. And if we did get this card, I mean, hey, awesome. I love this card. Another card is Vampire Grimson. Grimson also came in this box. It's one of the lower rarity cards, and it has a really unique effect where if a monster you control is destroyed without or a card effect, you can pay 1,000 life points, and that monster is not destroyed. So you get to protect them by paying 1,000 life points. And if this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon that monster from the graveyard. So again, it's a very interesting, like, Monster Reborn like card in that regard, and also it's a protection card. So I could see us getting a card of this power level, but again, I don't know if we would, being that they're probably going to try to push Genesis. Next, we're going to talk about Vampire Kingdom. Vampire Kingdom is a really interesting card to talk about with Speed Duels because I feel like if they're going to release vampires and they don't release any of the good monster cards, you kind of need Kingdom in some sort of way. And you can't release Kingdom in Speed Duels. Not with the format being how it is or certain skills being how they are. The skill that I'm talking about here is the viral infection COVID-19 skill, and what that skill does is says you can just discard as many cards from your hand as possible, and that send cards from your opponent's deck to the graveyard. That skill combined with this spell makes it to where this spell is blowing up a monster every single turn, and I think it's a monster. Yeah, it's a card. You're destroying a card every single turn. And then you're also dumping a vampire monster along with it. So you're foolish burialing, you're discarding a zombie from your hand, and you're destroying a card your opponent controls, all by using the viral infection spell card. And that is unhealthy for Speed Duels. So if this card would get released, that's going to be the best deck. Viral vampires, and you won't even have to play vampires in it. You can literally just play this card in every deck. But if that skill did get eroded, then Vampire Kingdom could definitely come for sure. Like, if you see an errata before the list comes out and it hits that skill, Vampire Kingdom's confirmed. Moving on, there's Vampire Domain, which in my opinion is my favorite vampire spell card. You get an additional vampire normal summon per turn, which is really nice. It's at the cost of 500 life points, which I think is fine. But each time your vampire monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you gain that life points back. And I think with the deck being the way that it is, you're paying a lot of life points. So being able to gain that life points back through battle damage is really interesting and brings the vampire vibe to it. So I definitely feel like we could get Domain, if anything. Another spell worth talking about is Vampire Desire. This card has two effects. One is you can send a vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different level than a monster you control. And that monster becomes the level, so it Foolish Burials. And then you can target a vampire monster in your graveyard, send a monster you control to the graveyard, and special summon that target. So it's a monster reborn of sorts. It's really interesting. And if you get Retainer, or if you get Familiar, it monster reborns them back from the graveyard without having to use their effects. And you're able to search your deck for the monster with a spell. So that's really nice as well. The trap card is Vampire Takeover. Again, if we don't get Kingdom, we're less likely to get Takeover. Takeover just activates Kingdom from hand. It's Metaverse. But it also has an additional effect that you can special summon a dark vampire monster from your graveyard into defense position after you do that. So, yeah, special summon Retainer. And then grab your monster. Yeah, it's really good. Tribute Retainer. Summon Lord of D. Tribute or banish Lord of, or not Lord of D, Vampire Lord, banish Vampire Lord, summon Vampire Genesis. It's a whole combo. It's really interesting. So Vampires has potential to be a very broken deck in Speed Duels. It's really hard to say what direction they're going to go with it. But if I had to guess, this is a direction I could foresee them doing. We have the Genesis, we have the Lord, and we have the Lady. I chose Familiar to come in this deck, but not Retainer. I think that Familiar is, again, the most fair one to come. You're not searching your broken spell and trap cards. You're just getting the monster, and in most cases, you're getting the Lord of D to tribute the Familiar to summon your Genesis, and I think that's perfectly fine. The other card that I put in here that we didn't talk about is actually Vampire's Grace. Vampire's Grace is really interesting because if you control, say, Vampire Lord, you can pay 2,000 life points while Grace is in the graveyard and special summon her to the field, and then once per turn, you can declare a card, monster, spell, or trap, and then send that card from your opponent, that type of card from your opponent's deck to the graveyard. This will proc your Vampire Kingdom, and I think that's really nice to have, and also doesn't completely break her as a card. You know what I mean? It's not like you're going to play Vampire Grace over Genesis just because it does that. Next, we're going to be talking about Vampire Vamp. Now, this is definitely a boss monster that I feel like is better than Genesis, but also it's just very strong and can be easily outed in certain scenarios. I like the card a lot. It's a 2 tribute monster. If you're not on the Pyramid Turtle, then hey, you're not summoning it. Pyramid Turtle is in the deck as well. I think it's like a crazy card for the deck, and it definitely pushes the deck into a direction that is healthy for Speed Duels in a power creep sort of way. I mean, you're making the game go a little bit faster. and making it more fun in the process. Another card we didn't talk about that I think could come is going to be Gozuki. Gozuki is a really interesting card, and it came out in the same set as Vampire Lord did in Duel Links. And it says that during the main phase, you can send a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard, and then if this card is sent to your graveyard, you can banish one zombie monster from your graveyard except Gozuki, and special summon one zombie monster from your hand. I think both of those effects are very fair, and it's not like Mizuki, which I think is like too crazy for Speed Duels, in my opinion. The other card that I think that we could get is going to be Plague Wolf. Now, in the anime, Kamula, whatever her name is, she uses a vampire werewolf card, but we don't have that card in TCG, OCG, or anything. So this is like the closest zombie card I can think that comes to it, and it actually is a decent effect monster. It's just once per turn. You can make its attack double, being 2,000 until the end of the turn, and then during the end phase, if you activate that effect, you destroy that card. So you just get a 2,000 beater. That's pretty nice. And then we got the Ryukoki, the Goblin Zombie reprint, and the Bloodsucker reprint, because I want to make this as realistic as possible, and let's be real, they like reprinting bad cards. Domain and the Vampire's Desire, I think is what it's called, are also in this deck. Call of the Mummy, I think, is really strong. Again, it's just a Valhalla. And then for the more reprints, it's Book of Life, Pyramids of Wonders, Haunted Shrine, Tutton, the Mask Counter Trap, and then Robin Zombie, which is a effect that says when you inflict damage to your opponent sends one card from the top of their deck to the graveyard or something like that. Another card worth talking about that I don't think is going to be in the deck itself, but it's going to be in the extra 20 cards that are going to be in there. I think that's how many there are. It's actually the Red Eyes Zombie Dragon. We are getting Red Eyes, as you saw last Friday. I talked about it a little bit. And so I think that Red Eyes Zombie Dragon is a card that we could most definitely get. And it's a boss monster all in itself. It works really well with the Red Eyes support cards like Red Eyes Spirit, Red Eyes Insight. And it just can be summoned off a Haunted Shrine, Book of Life, and it steals your opponent's zombie monsters. So if you're in a mirror match, it makes it really strong in that regard. But any other regard is just, a 2400 beater that gets floated into from the Pyramid Turtle. It's just really cool, and I, think it could be really nice for the format to see such a powerful and fan favorite card. If I could say a skill for this deck, I would say that Vampire Kingdom would be a very nice card to have as a skill. We actually called it Infernal Vania, funny enough. And the reason why we called it that is because she uses a card in the anime called this. And I just think it's just would be nice to call the skill that. I think it would be so funny. It's just, at the beginning of the duel, you activate it in your field spell zone. It is a Vampire Kingdom, and it just has the ability to make your zombie monsters gain 500 attack points. And then when a vampire or a card is sent from your opponent's deck to the graveyard, you get to send a card your opponent controls to the graveyard, and then dump a dark vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard. So it's just, in my opinion, the best way to bring it to it without having to errata the skill. Even though probably should just errata the skill so we can get the good card. But if they decide not to do that, which I could see them doing, then just having it the skill I think is fine in itself. If you guys enjoy this type of content, make sure you leave a like on this video. If you guys are excited for me to continue this next Friday, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you can see it when it comes out at 5 p.m. EST. And above all else, I want you all to have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.